You think we're good to start, Scott?
Yeah, let's kick it off.
Okay. My name is Brian Courtney. For those of you that don't know me, I am currently on the EO board. I've been a member of EO since 2013, and really excited about the content we have today. I'm super appreciative of all the panelists and Scott and everybody that pivoted and turned this into a virtual event. Um, so I do ask for everybody's patience. We may hit a speed bump or two along the road, but we will definitely make it through. I know we have members on the call. We have some prospects, key executives. So just want to welcome everybody here and thanks for dealing with this crazy Oklahoma weather. Just a quick update if you haven't been out on the roads, they're probably worse today than they were before just because snow is now turning into ice. So if you get out and about, just be careful, give yourself plenty of time. But we are super appreciative that you're here with us today. So Scott Cravens will be leading this webinar, and Scott and what was Full Sail, now Mercer Advisors, have been great partners of EO over the many years. We greatly appreciate all the stuff that they do and the relationship that we have with them. And so I will turn this over to Scott Cravens and let him run the ship. Thanks again for everybody for attending.
Thanks, Brian, and good morning slash almost afternoon, everybody. Like Brian said, just first want to express gratitude for the last minute deviation. This reminds me of COVID. Matt Hinkle and I were commiserating. We served on the Oklahoma City Planning Commission together during that time, and we used to host public meetings via Zoom and invite members of the public in for these hearings. In some instances, we would have 7-hour Zoom meetings with 90 people on the call. It was a real experience in humanity. Um, but again, thanks everybody for joining us. Great programming today. I wish we were doing this in person. Someone made the joke that they thought I had done this just to get out of buying everybody lunch. It's a reasonable thought, but in this case, shut up, Matt. Reasonable thought, but in this case, it's not the truth. So I owe everybody a lunch in EO, and we'll make good on that in the future. Um, Very blessed and honored today to be joined by Ward 5 Councilperson Matt Hinkle. As I said, Matt's hosted in a number of roles and held a number of roles for the city of Oklahoma City. He and I served together as planning commissioners, but he's now the Ward 5 City Council person, representing kind of what is amounts to the south central and kind of southeastern part of Oklahoma City. Um, Sue Hollenbeck, who is the executive manager and special projects manager for the city manager's office. Sue was someone that Councilman Hinkle suggested we have join this for her knowledge. And in preparation for this meeting, I will say that was a good add on Councilman Hinkle's part. And then finally, David Todd. David Todd is the MAPS program manager for the city of Oklahoma City. So he is the MAPS guru and all things MAPS person for us. And I'm excited about it. I hope that you guys today, Sam and Amina and Brian had charged us with putting together programming to bring everybody up to speed on what's happening in the city of Oklahoma City. And I think we've done that. We're going to cover some key topics involving all the MAPS programs, how we got to MAPS 4. We'll talk about MAPS 4. We'll talk about the arena. And then finally, we'll talk about the most exciting news to come at Oklahoma City recently, which is the LA 28 Olympics. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. So let's get started. Let's turn our attention first to MAPS and talk about just the progression of MAPS. So David, I'll start with you. Kind of give us a quick overview of metropolitan area projects. When did it start? What was kind of the premise behind that? And what have the results been of those programs? And let's just kind of start with MAPS 1, and we'll flip through a series of slides here as you kind of talk about each program.
Right. Well, thanks for having me today. In about 1990, the city was doing the usual economic development activities, and we were turned down for a very large one. And Mayor Norick, he just realized that it was time that we started doing something that that made people want to come to the community and not try and bribe them to come to Oklahoma City to relocate their business or to expand their business. So he came up with the idea of MAPS, and that was an acronym for Metropolitan Area Projects. And as I said, it was an effort to make it a place where people wanted to be, wanted to come here, but also it made it a better place for those of us that were already here. So, in as you see on the slide, in '93, the first MAPS initiative passed. Now, MAPS w has always been advertised and was initially advertised as a 1 cent sales tax for a defined duration, a start and an end, and it definitely has an end, and it was for defined projects. So they told us what are we going to do and how long is it going to take and here's how much we're going to raise. The other thing that was unique about MAPS is that it had citizen oversight. Um, that just seemed like the key to all the mistrust in government, and that is carried through all the way through MAPS 4. So the the vote barely passed, and that's the funny thing the mayor always says is you can't find anybody now that voted against it. But it did just barely pass. We were that far from not being where we are today. So you can see the original projects that were on that list, and all of them were built. And I believe we were a little short on money at that time, and they had another vote to extend it. It passed. They had a little bit more money to complete the projects. The Ford Center, yeah, is now the Paycom, and the ballpark was the first one that was finished. Now on the heels of that, with the success, and it was still going when they proposed Maps 2, which was called Maps for Kids, but Mayor Humphreys said that you can't have a great city if you don't have great schools, and Oklahoma City Public Schools was the focus on this. And at the time, they were in terrible shape. They hadn't been able to pass a bond in decades. They just could not get anything done, and the schools were literally falling apart. So it was about 500 million just in the MAPS tax, and then there was some bond issue money that also passed, as I said, for the first time in a long time, and that was used. And then the MAPS money was split among the 23 other school districts around the city. So we renovated 70 different schools. We built 5 high schools. We built 2 elementaries. We bought dozens of buses. We bought 10,000 computers. We modernized libraries. We built learning centers. We just did so many things for the schools to get them caught up. It wasn't a complete remake, but it was just to get them caught up for those decades that they weren't able to pass the bond issues. And then ultimately, the MAPS office ended up administrating some bond money that they had on a subsequent bond for some gymnasiums. And then keeping the ball rolling, in 2009, MAPS 3 was passed, $777 million. Over $800 million was collected. And then when you add interest, we had about $50 million in excess of the 777 million. Again, just 54%, but I, I find very few people who are dissatisfied with MAPS 3 and the things we've done. Um, Continuing kind of on the same idea of the original maps is large um municipal type projects, things to make it a better place to be. So Scissortail Park is definitely one of a kind, 70-acre downtown park that took out a whole lot of really depressed areas and unused and turned it into a beautiful park. Streetcar system, bringing back a streetcar that we lost in the 40s. More river improvements that we'll talk about here in the future in this. And then 4 senior health and wellness centers. Those were immensely popular. State fair improvements. We did the Bennett Event Center out there and a new convention center, which I'm very proud of, right across from the park. And lots of trails and sidewalks. We built about 39 miles of trails and 55 miles of sidewalks. So continuing on, MAPS 4, which we're administrating right now, passed in 2019, got a 72% approval on this. I think it's my opinion that that approval rate was because we shifted a little bit in the types of projects we were doing, but $978 million was the original estimate that has since been amended to be over $1 billion in proposed collections. So I say that we changed a little bit. You can see sprinkled throughout here, there's some other types of projects. There's a civil rights center. There's lots of improvements for parks and recreation. There's 107 neighborhood parks that we will renovate. There's 4 youth centers. But really what's different is homelessness and mental health, the crisis center and the restoration center. And then when you skip on over, we got Palomar and the diversion hub. So the diversion hub helps people navigate the criminal justice system, and that's to help keep people out of the county jail. Palomar is for victims of domestic abuse. Those are all the different kinds of projects. Animal shelter was a very popular project within this. And then I want to point out also that we see 16 projects here, but when you split them out, there's over 95 projects in the program because youth centers is really 4 projects. Homelessness and mental health is 3 projects. Parks and Rec, as I mentioned, 107 different parks. We've broken that into 10 different projects. Innovation District has 4 different projects in it. So, like I said, there's 95 different projects within MAPS 4.
David, how long have you served as the MAPS program manager? How long have you been involved?
This month it'll be 14 years.
Okay. And who was the MAPS program manager prior to you? Who helped with some of the earlier MAPS programs?
So Eric Winger was prior to me, and Jim Couch was assistant city manager and finished up some of the original MAPS projects, and Jim Thompson was the original MAPS director, also serving as assistant city manager at the time.
Yeah, I think what always astounds me when I look at that progressively is, the first maps being 300 million, and I look at what we got for our money, and then I think about what it takes today to do those projects and how much more expensive it's gotten. And I'm sure that'll be something that maybe folks who have joined us have questions about. We'll skip it for now, but I'm just always astonished by the scale of the projects and yet the city's success at being able to administer, implement, execute, and finish these projects on time, on budget. It is nothing short of an incredible testament to the leadership and the success of the city. I think what makes it great. Matt, I'm curious from you as a sitting city council person, how do you think about your responsibility to the MAPS brand and just the importance of MAPS overall to the city as you visit with constituents and people in town?
Like David alluded to, we wouldn't be anywhere close as a city as to what we are right now without all the different maps. And the animal shelter in MAPS 4 probably is what took it over the top, because when we had citizens come to speak for and against MAPS, the city council chambers were full of people in Save the Animal t-shirts. And so you don't have to like all 16 projects, but if one of them's your pet, that's part of the beauty of it, is if you want one, you got to vote for them all. The thing that tickles me the most about all the MAPS projects is everybody who drives through Oklahoma City and gets gas, eats a cheeseburger. It's a wonderful, vicious circle of building better things to get more people to come to pay for us to build more better things. Is a great plan and a great idea, and to date has worked really, really well. A lot of credit to David and his predecessors for value engineering where needed and keeping it on track and keeping the budget in line. Because if you would have started overspending on all these things, then it wouldn't have been near as trustworthy and popular as what it is and what it has been.
Yeah, no question. I'm always taken aback when we travel for chamber trips and we learn about what other cities are doing. We recently went to Nashville for this year's trip, and Matt, you alluded to kind of the visitor economy driving sales tax. So it's not just residents paying this tax and helping us build these facilities that only our community benefits from. It's people who come through here. And, we'll talk about the Olympics later, which is a huge part. And I was absolutely blown away by the number of people that I was told will be here for the Olympics. But I think about even people who live in Edmond. If you're an Edmond resident on this call, I want to thank you and encourage you to keep coming to Oklahoma City to spend your money instead of spending it there, so we can keep building better facilities. So, but since you mentioned the sales tax, Sue, let me turn to you. What do the city sales tax collections look like today? And if we can advance the slide, Danielle, I've got a graphic here that just sort of demonstrates this for people to understand where the money goes and what that looks like. So if you could explain this to us, Sue, and include in your explanation kind of the difference of the use tax and the sales tax and that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. So basically your slide says it all. There is an 8.62% sales tax that the city collects on everything. 4.5% of that 8.62 is actually goes to the state. So when the city collects the sales tax, the city is only collecting 4.125%. So of that 4.125, 2.25 goes to the general fund, and that's what funds the vast majority of things that the city pays for, whether that's in the 5,000 people, the salaries, everything like that, the things that you see that the city does that is not a MAPS project or anything like that. That's that 2.25%. That's the majority of the funding that the city gets. Then there is 0.75%, which is dedicated solely to public safety, so like police and fire. And then there's a 0.125% which is an eighth of a cent that goes to the zoo. That's one of the reasons we have such a quality zoo, is that we have a direct sales tax that goes to that. And then the last is that 1%, which funds MAPS. And so if MAPS if this is the last MAPS, which I hope that it isn't, then that 1 cent would drop off and we would collect 3.125%. So that's basically how it goes in regards to how the percentage of the Oklahoma City portion of the sales tax is collected. And then you have things what are called use tax. So sales tax is collected at the time of purchase. Use tax is collected afterwards. Those are usually things that are purchased from out of state that is not a sales tax that then is paid for by the purchaser directly to the city. And so those that it makes it more fair for local businesses and everything, because the local economy can't supply everything that is needed to everybody all the time. So those are the two basic sales taxes that the city relies on.
Now, do use taxes exclusively show up through online purchases, Sue, or are there other sources for use taxes as well?
A lot of it is online, but also anytime you have any construction or anything like that, if you are buying a construction company is buying things from out of state, say building materials, anything like that, that is coming into the state that's being used in the city, then that is being paid by use tax as well.
Got it. And just to confirm and clarify the point, the zoo tax shown on the screen, the public safety tax, and the general fund, those are permanent taxes.
Correct.
The only thing that's temporary is the MAPS tax, correct?
That is correct.
I think that's helpful. Again, I'll just add this anecdote that, Nashville, for example, is a state that doesn't have a state income tax, or I'm sorry, Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax. Nashville is only supplied by sales tax. And I found it really interesting when we were there with the chamber, kind of looking at what makes their economy flourish. Their visitor economy is so well developed that a lot, and this was astounding to me, $30 million a day is collected by tourists in Nashville each year, which is just mind-blowing. So the bigger our city gets and the more these facilities we're constructing bring people in from out of town, the more of that money that's coming into the system. That's not just people going down to the street and buying groceries or gas. So are there exceptions like there are at the state level for sales tax in Oklahoma City? Is anything exempted from sales tax the way it is at the state?
Are you talking specifically like groceries?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Groceries
So
is exempted from state sales tax, but not for the city, correct?
correct. Groceries is the only thing that I can think of that the state is exempt from. Cities don't like that again because the way that the state works is the only way cities can have money for their general fund. Cities do not get a portion of the county tax or your property taxes to use for general operations. So the cities need that sales tax revenue, especially off of groceries, to help fund their cities. And depending on, whether it's Oklahoma City or whatever city that you're in. So no, I mean, you've got regular things like nonprofits or something like that that is sales tax exempt, and they're exempt across the board. But there's no special sales tax exemption like groceries for the state. But I do
That
want to mention, Scott, you talked about the visitor economy. There's a hotel motel tax that the city collects that are on the hotel room rates, and those are mostly paid by people from out of state, and that collection of money goes into a different pot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, kind of on that same line, like David, are there other funding sources like the hotel motel tax, for example, that go into funding maps beyond the 1 cent sales tax, or is that exclusively where those funds come from?
Well, I don't believe there was any other funds used in maps up until maps 4. But I should say that all of the maps projects, I mean, obviously the schools, but maps 1, maps 3, maps 4, we rely on partners for operations. So that's certainly you could call a funding source where they operate that. But as we've evolved into maps 4, there's a lot of different sources that are being used. There's the hotel motel tax for one instance was used on the Coliseum at the fairgrounds, some bonds out there. Um, we've had private donations. Multipurpose Stadium has up to $15 million commitment. We've had foundations. The Arnall Foundation is helping us with Diversion Hub and with the restoration and the Crisis Center. They've done a tremendous amount in those projects. I know I'm forgetting a couple, but we do have those kind of donations now in Maps 4. But prior to that, it was all just Maps tax.
Yeah, you were alluding to a lot of Maps 4 projects there, so let me turn our attention back there. Kind of what astounded me is I found this slide online, and Danielle, if you would go ahead and advance to slide 12, just so people can see how complex and detailed this is. This is overwhelming to me, although I have to admit my type A loves the organization associated with this. I think this really demonstrates the complexity of what you're managing, David. And I know there's a lot of folks on your team and helping you behind the scenes, including Sue, for example, and others who are providing resources when needed. But help us kind of understand, like, give us the update on where we are right now since Maps 4 is ongoing. Where are we with the projects and program and funding, and how do we look as we approach being 6 years into this thing?
Sure. So what you're looking at is the timeline in the implementation plan, and this is our map. And the reason we have to have a map like this is because we are, as I forgot to mention, a pay-as-you-go. We are cash basis. There's no financing of any of these projects. So we had to go through and compare our income with what we were going to spend. So we've completed the Fairgrounds Coliseum. That was the first project that was funded a little bit out of Maps 3, some excess collections and leftover from Maps 3, and we got a head start on that. But that's open. I'm very proud of how that turned out. Multipurpose Stadium is in design, and that will start construction this year. Claire Looper, that I should have said 2026 is a massive year for Maps 4 because we've got some projects finishing and we've got so many starting. So Claire Looper Civil Rights Center will start construction this year, probably late summer. The Paycom is taken out of the project now, and that's been moved to the arena that I'm sure you'll want to talk about later. But we've got 4 packages of parks renovations that are in design right now. Youth centers, I've got one in design, one that's just now getting under contract, and we should break ground on the first youth center that'll be in Woodson Park midsummer or so. The homelessness is ongoing. The Oklahoma City Housing Authority is doing some projects with that money, but mental health, the crisis center final plans are going to be approved this month or in February, I should say, and we'll start construction in about April, and then the restoration center will start late summer. We've got all kinds of public transit stuff going. You've probably seen bus stops that were being built all over town. We're going to do about 500 of those. Innovation District has some renovations going on with the district itself, and we have plans for the Foster Center that should go out this year also. Senior Wellness Center, looking for a site. That one's still early in the process. Animal shelter is under construction, probably about 20%, 25% complete. And we're about a year away from opening that new animal shelter, which is about 3 times the size of the one that we have right now. I see animal shelters on there twice, actually. Diversion Hub. Diversion Hub, that's the exciting one next, is that it will open in May. So it's very close to completion. We've got to move some furniture in and get them moved and get them operated. But Diversion Hub is essentially complete this spring. Palomar is under construction and has about a year left on it. Sidewalks, we've been building sidewalks all over the city. We've completed 3 sets of new bike lanes on what they call the crosstown, which is 19th and 16th, and then some on Classen. We'll start the one trail project that we have this summer, and then beautification projects. They'll start this summer also. So sorry that took a long time, but there's a lot of projects to cover to give you an update.
No, that's great. And I think you correctly noted that, and you caught it, which, I'm not surprised, but there's animal shelter was on there twice, which is my fault. The Palomar, you correctly addressed, was, I think, the one that was missing. So thanks for catching that and giving the update there. David, when will MAPS 4 conclude in terms of collections and in terms of construction, in your view? I mean, you can see the schedule, obviously, but just like, what is the realistic expectation there?
Right. So you can see that the schedule in some instances goes clear out to 2032. We'll do our best not to do that. Collections end in 2028. We're presently 3.7% above projections, which is great. And that's after the council reinitiated another $100 million to the program, seeing that collections were going so well.
Yeah. And, I know there's a lot of information that gets out there about MAPS. For example, I've been asked a bunch by friends recently if the sit-in exhibit that's right there at Robinson and Maine that was installed is a MAPS project. So, which it's not. But I know there's a lot of misconceptions around what is and what isn't. Matt, I'm curious from you, like, what are the most common misconceptions you hear about MAPS 4 specifically, just again, since we're in the present now, that you hear from residents?
Well, even as much as I thought I knew about the city and the operations of the city, David and I have been friends for a long time. So I was thanking David for the great upgrades to the golf course at Earlywine. He's like, that's not my project. Well, that's not a MAPS project. No, that's a parks project. Well, how many different, so there's a lot that goes on that doesn't belong to MAPS necessarily. David's talking about building sidewalks, which I'm very appreciative of because Ward 5 lacks sidewalks. But a lot of those sidewalks are getting built by ACOG and federal dollars. And then Public Works has their say in where sidewalks go and some of them that get built. So there's just a lot of moving parts that unless you really dig in, you don't know how it's all funded. Once again, I'm still learning a lot. The airport trust and the water trust, two perfect examples of city entities that aren't city stuff. I mean, they have to operate autonomously because of the amount of money they have to borrow, and cities aren't allowed to accumulate debt past a year. So it's very interesting web of who pays for what.
Yeah. Maybe even more broadly, Matt, just because you mentioned, like, while we're on it, but what are the misconceptions of city government generally? Like, the one I remember from our time as planning commission is people would come in during public comments and complain about school districts, for example. But like, what are the ones you hear the most, and what would you want to share with people to make sure they were aware of that were participating today?
One of my favorite new lines is, "It's amazing how how stupid smart people are," because I have a lot of conversations with some really educated people, and they're mad at me because the highway up north gets mowed more than the highway down south does. Well, that's an ODOT thing. We have absolutely nothing to do with when and how highways get mowed. I had a little old lady when I was knocking doors, and I've told this story a million times. She said she liked me and she was going to support me as long as I help protect the border. And the border between Oklahoma City and Moore, I got that. We'll make Moore build the wall, and so I get the opportunity to speak to a lot of kids in some of the different high schools around, and it's too bad civics isn't a required class anymore, and it's too bad adults aren't required to take civics, because back to my previous statement on how and what the city is able to do based on just city code alone. I had a guy reach out this morning who's mad because I can't come get rid of the geese in his neighborhood. Well, that's a waterfowl thing. Why don't you call the wildlife department? I did. They said it was your responsibility. Well, they're pooping on my street. Well, I feel your pain, but there's nothing we can do about it. So that's a real roundabout answer to your specific question. But if you're going to be mad at somebody, make sure you know who you're going to be mad at and why.
Well, I just want to make sure you still remember that you promised me toll roads coming in from Edmond, and I haven't seen those yet. So I'm just looking for those toll collection booths so that my friend Belinda and other people who live out that way can help us fund more things.
As soon as I
Let's
get
wrap
the
up.
geese problem solved, I'll take care of that.
Fair enough. Get your net. Let's end up the maps discussion here. What is the number one thing that you think people can do to support maps and the success of those programs in the city outside of sales tax?
If you're asking me specifically, I live in a really weird part of Oklahoma City where the things that are actually Oklahoma City are proclaimed to be more schools, South Moore, West Moore, all the Moore junior highs, even the Sprouts at 119th and Penn claims to be a Moore Sprouts, but all those are Oklahoma City tax dollars. But when you drive out of the city and actually drive into the city of Moore because you like that Chili's better or you like that crest better, then you're killing us. You're spending our sales tax dollars other places where it could be used to raise us up instead of raise Moore up, raise Edmond up. And I'm not being critical of those other cities, but as a planning commissioner, we built thousands and thousands of houses and neighborhoods out in Ward 3, which is far southeast Oklahoma City, and we didn't put any commercial out there. So every dollar they go spend is in the middle of Mustang, and we don't get any of those sales tax dollars. So smart growth and spend your money at home. That's where it helps the most.
Yeah. Shopping locally is probably the message, succinctly put. I mean, it's just making sure you're spending your money in Oklahoma City and having great reasons to do it. There's plenty of places to do that. So good point. Well, let's turn our discussion to the arena. Probably should have addressed that as a misconception, not a maps for project. But David, I'll kind of start with you on this point. Tell us a little bit about, so after maps 4 was passed, there was an additional special election. Tell us about that, why it's different and why it's not a maps project.
Well, so the project is going to use the maps penny, but that's not unusual. If you look back, that we haven't talked about between Maps 1 and Maps for Kids, and between Maps for Kids and Maps 3, and recently between Maps 3 and Maps 4, there were other special elections to continue to use that penny, but they weren't branded as maps and they weren't used as maps. The most recent is the Better Streets, Safer City um, program that was used, that Public Works administered, and they did a bunch of street resurfacing and sidewalks and those kind of projects. So this is kind of similar to that, where they'll be using the 1 cent sales tax to pay for the new arena. Where it differs is, and it can't be a MAPS project because it will be financed. We need to get the money now. We need to build the arena now, and then collect the money. We can't wait another 6 years to collect that money. So that's kind of the biggest difference. There's not citizen oversight in the traditional manner. There's certainly council oversight. But I think that city manager and city council saw this project similar to a MAPS project and gave it to the MAPS office to execute.
Yeah, and just I want to highlight something you said there. We're borrowing the money to do it, but the penny extension was approved, which is the mechanism for triggering the financing, right? To show that there's a funding
Right.
source. So as that money is then collected post MAPS 4, post 2028, which you said earlier, that's when the arena will start to be repaid and that debt will be paid off through those collections.
Right. So that collection will go till 2034.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Is this a project that you're overseeing, David? Does this fall under your department and programs purview, or is this outside of it?
Yeah, we're overseeing the whole thing, and we treat it very much as a MAPS project. It's kind of similar. There's some different dynamics in there. ASM is the operator, and the Thunder is certainly the primary and major tenant there. So they have some input on that. They've also got money in it also. So the team is contributing $50 million to the project, which, back to the previous question about additional sources, this is a little different.
Yeah, you mentioned the $50 million that the ownership's putting in. Beyond the penny sales tax extension and then the owners, is there additional money that's going into this project from any other source, or are those the two funding mechanisms for it?
Off the top of my head, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, let me back up. There is some MAPS 4 money. So we were going to renovate the Paycom, and instead of using that money to do the renovations, a lot of that was put together, and that's how we've fronted working on some of this, paying consultants, architects, engineers, and those people. So some MAPS 4 money is being used on this.
Yeah, and that's on the screen. I found that on the city's website, showed to be about 70 million. Does that sound right to you?
That's
Okay.
correct. Yep.
So basically that was programmed into MAPS 4 because we decided not to do it. Then those funds roll to the arena project
Correct.
because they were already committed to the arena itself.
Right. We did some renovations to the Paycom just to keep it rolling, because obviously it's still being used and seats wear out and scoreboard gets bypassed with technology. The elevators that were in there were the original elevators from over 20 years ago. So those needed to be replaced. But we did just what needed to be done to keep it up to specs, so to speak, and then move the rest of it to the new arena.
Yeah, I think people are often caught off guard, at least the people that I speak to, around this idea that we built, what was the Ford Center in 2002 for about 80 million bucks. And then ultimately, like, we're replacing that. Here we are, 23 years later, 24 years later, with a proposed new arena that'll come online in, several more years. But the cost difference, and then we're just essentially done with this, what is functionally obsolescent building versus, I serve on the state fair board, and at one of the meetings before the Coliseum opened, David, they brought in the original budget that was on this big board of what it cost to build the Norick Arena, and it was $1.8 million in 1962.
Yeah.
And I think about the economic return that facility has generated for our community, since before it was taken down just last year, after being built in 1962. And then I think about, the investments that it takes today to provide and stay competitive in these public facilities. But what I would tell people, again, as someone who's traveled around with the chamber to cities across the country, we've been to Milwaukee, we've been to Sacramento, we've been to places where they've built these arenas. And then you come back and you see our arena. And if you haven't done this, you just realize how competitive this facility landscape is and how unfortunate it is. But the reality of, as you see there, point 8 on the screen, the Paycom Center is the smallest NBA arena by square footage, and it was the second smallest capital investment of the NBA arenas that exist today. Just kind of a crazy stat when you think that it's only 23, 24 years old. So that's wild. Sue, I'm curious from you, because this is something that I think people, question or don't fully understand. Who will own this arena? Let's start there. Who owns it?
The city of Oklahoma City owns it.
End of discussion right there,
End
right?
of discussion. The city owns it, just like we own the Paycom, just like the city owns the convention center. City owns all MAPS projects, all bond projects. So the city owns this building, or will own the building when it's done.
And so what is the legal construct of the relationship between the city and the Thunder organization?
So the city and the Thunder have a document, what's called a use license agreement for the Thunder to operate out of the current Paycom and then out of the new arena. And then the city has an operator, which is currently Legends Global. So ASM got bought by Legends, and it's called Legends Global now, and they're the current operator of the arena. So they work with the Thunder on their games, and then they're the ones who procure the concerts that come into town and work with the promoters and everything on those concerts as well.
Yeah, and so for kind of non-Thunder events, though, are there other groups that are involved in the management of that facility, or does that fall to a city responsibility?
No, that's through the operator, through Legends Global ASM.
Okay.
That is all.
So
through
Legends is
that.
doing all of that.
Correct.
Got it. So they're essentially a kind of a facility manager for the city.
Yes, the city hires the organization to manage and operate the building. Yes. And that goes through all games. It goes through all concerts. Anyone can come in and rent the facility, depending on whether, the time frame, if it's already booked or not, those kinds of things. But yes, they all have to go through Legends Global, which used to be ASM.
Got it. Okay. And I think something that, David, back to you for a second on this, that seems complex to me is it's the Thunder Arena in terms of its primary purpose. I mean, that's why we're building it. We own it as the city. We're going to have these other events there. So it has to be formatted for the NBA. It has to meet modern specifications. But we also want to be able to bring in larger concerts and other events that we can't host today, given the small size of our facility, which, to Matt's point, brings people downtown, keeps them shopping locally, brings in more stuff. But there's a lot of people involved in this. Who is involved in making the design and construction decisions? Like, we see this image on the screen, invariably the Thunder had a ton of input here. How does that work?
So we kind of follow the MAPS model on that and talking to stakeholders and user groups. But yes, the Thunder is the primary tenant, and we have a committee of city people and people from the Thunder that actually make the decisions. But a lot of it's really driven with the great architect that we have, TVS with Manica. They've done these all over the world. They know what works, what doesn't. They advise us. They're just told, here's what we would like. How do you make this happen? And one instance is, obviously we want basketball crowds to be closer to the floor. Get them as close as you can for that experience and squeeze the arena down. But we also need to make that arena big enough on the floor so we can have monster truck. They need big turning radius, pardon me, or rodeo. So working with ASM, Legends Global, the Thunder, all the other user groups, just trying to find that happy spot in there that gets everybody what they need. Hasn't been easy, but I think that I think we're going to be successful.
Yeah, one of the one thing that I thought this was interesting when I heard this for the first time. One of the challenges with the Paycom Arena today, and we'll turn our attention to that. I've got a question for Sue on that, but it was that there's not enough unloading dock doors for major concert tours. Is
Right.
that something that you took into account too in the design? Is aiding improved logistics in and out of this facility?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That being able to get people in and out, the increasing loads that the concerts are bringing that they need to hang from the ceiling, and the new kinds of structures that help speed that up. I've learned, the faster that a show can get in and out, the more apt they are to come to your town because it's more efficient for them. But at the same time, making sure that the stands are built so that camera angles are perfect for NBA. Um, the concession experience, people are going to see such a different concession experience in this. The whole thing is going to be just transformational. The way the 300 section, the Loud City area, the way they'll access the seats, the amenities that they'll have that they don't have in Paycom now, the amount of room that you'll have just to move around. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this image is amazing. If it looks anything like what this picture is going to look like, this is enough for me, but I'll be excited to go in for the first time and see it. I think the takeaway for people that it's probably the unknown, as I said, is and you said this, David, is being able to get in there and have a tighter turn for concerts enables us to hold and host more events in between things like thunder stints on away games, right? Road games or off-season stuff, or attracting more concerts because we can turn around events and shows much more quickly. So that's a huge part of helping justify the investment for the community and helping us generate more dollars through those events. So that's really interesting. Sue, the new arena, confirm this for me, is not going to be called Paycom. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't know what
And
it's going to be called as of yet.
so there's no knowledge, or it's not known what it'll be called.
No.
Who will receive the revenue for those rights if and when they're sold to somebody else?
So the revenue generation, the sponsorship generation of the new building actually belongs to the Thunder as a team. So the Thunder goes out and solicits those sponsorship rights, and then they retain the funding that comes from that.
Got it. So that's kind of a separate thing within the agreement that they would have the sponsorship rights to.
Correct.
Got it. I think that's just helpful for people to know and understand, again, the complexity of that relationship. It's just a nuance that's there that I think is worth highlighting. Yeah. Well, Matt, let me ask you the hard question, since you're the elected official on the call. What's going to happen to the new Paycom or the Paycom Center once the new arena replaces it? Let's start there, and I got another follow-up on that piece.
Well, Sue's welcome to weigh in on this, but the way I understand it is that when the new arena opens, there's a window of time that the ownership group of the Thunder has an opportunity to purchase it at market price, or someone can come along and put a bid in on it. And if that bid is higher than, market price, then the Thunder has the opportunity to, the ownership group of the Thunder has the opportunity to purchase that. Recently, and for what it's worth, the Paycom guy reached out to us and was interested in putting a bid in on the Paycom Center. And
you're referring to Chad Richardson, CEO of Paycom? Okay.
I don't know where that ended up, but we didn't hear much about it after that. I think there was a rift somewhere there. But so, Sue, did I get that mostly right?
You did, yes. You got it exactly right.
There you go.
Win one for you there, Matt. So basically, there'll have to be there's a redevelopment process, but it's fair to say that likely what will occur is that Paycom Arena, Ford Center, for me, will be torn down, and something will go there to replace it in terms of a new development. Is probably the most realistic future course for that structure. Yeah.
Correct.
Again, I'll point anybody listening that's really interested in this. to look at the Deer District outside of Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. We had a chance to tour it as a chamber when we were there in 2022, in anticipation of the new arena discussion in 23. And I will say what they've done there as a supporting development to the arena is pretty incredible. And you can look at that in aerials. You can drop down and look at it in street views. The development actually faces the arena, so it turns its back to the street to make sure that it activates the arena more fully. Just an incredible development. And I have a feeling, if I were a betting man, that's going to be what comes in its Oklahoma City form to that development down there once Paycom goes away. So that'll be interesting to see and watch unfold. All right, let's move on to the Olympics.
Scott, before you go, I want to add something else to that.
Oh,
if that's
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the beginning, the Ford Center was built for a hockey team that we didn't have. And then the hurricane happened and the Hornets came here, which proved to the NBA that we could support an NBA team, and which is what led to the Thunder. But keep in mind that the reason the Thunder's here is because Seattle wouldn't build them a new arena. And so a lot of that is what basically happened in Oklahoma City. The NBA came to the ownership of the Thunder and said, hey, this isn't good enough anymore. You guys need to do something, or potentially we could go find someplace else to play. And it could be the Las Vegas Thunder or. So we as a council got a whole lot of grief over the vote on the arena. But at the end of the day, all we did was pass it forward to where the citizens had a vote on the arena. And it passed by 72%. The Thunder, in spite of what Sue and David said, basically is just a tenant. They're there for 40 some odd nights a year. And why would they want to own an arena just being there 40 some odd nights a year and still have to manage it? So I think the city did a great job in voting to put that in. I think, like what you said about the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee and what can happen around there when the old arena is gone, once again, is going to be a really transformational thing for downtown Oklahoma City.
Yeah, well, you were there with me in Milwaukee, and I agree with you 100%. I do agree with you that I think the council unnecessarily got some civic blowback around that. But the reality is you gave it to the people to vote. Everybody had their chance to show up and cast the ballot, and 72% of people said we should build it. And
there's nobody knocking down our door to put another NBA team here. So,
nor will there be, because to your point, Austin, Nashville, and Las Vegas all want teams. They're all bigger economies. They all have more corporate citizenry and backing. Our choice was build this and lock them in, or in the absence of the current ownership, which at some point could be the case, we're likely to lose the team. And so I think it's a tough deal, but I would say, I think understanding that the council simply voted to allow the citizens to vote on this, and we did that, is the right way to look at it, frame it, and to understand what happened. So I appreciate you articulating that point a lot.
And if ownership sells and somebody tries to move it out of here, Sue can give me the figures here, but they're locked in through 2050. So there's recourse there. They're going to be here regardless of who the owners are.
Yeah, so you want to add anything to that before we move on? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's turn to the Olympics now, with our kind of remaining time before we do Q&A, because this is super exciting. I mean, I've lived here my whole life, so I watched I was here for OK-89 as a kid in the sense of the trials, and like saw it on the water tower up until, I don't know, Matt, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago? Like it hasn't been gone very long, but we're actually hosting real Olympic Games. So tell us, Sue, if you would, like, what's the origin story here? How did Oklahoma City come to be able to host the 2028 Olympics, the events we're hosting?
It's a great story, and it truly starts off with MAPS. I mean, MAPS is the precipice of so many things that has happened in Oklahoma City since the beginning in the foundation in 1993. So the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, and LA28, one of their largest initiatives is sustainability. And LA28 won the bid for the 28 Olympics, saying that they weren't going to build anything. They were going to build no permanent structures, nothing permanent for the games. And as that went through and they won the bid, they realized they didn't have the facilities for some of the things that were in the original bid, i.e. canoe slalom. And knowing that they didn't have that venue, they were going to have to either break the promise and build a whitewater center, or they were going to have to try to find another venue for it. And ultimately, that's what it came down to, is as LA28 won the bid, they were going through everything, realizing that that was a venue that they didn't have. Oklahoma City came forward and said, hey, we have a venue, and that was a MAPS 3 project. So we had this venue that was actually built very specifically to be able to hold Olympic type events. And as the process went through and went forward for the LA28, after Paris 24, baseball and softball were actually added to the docket. And as baseball and softball were added to the docket, LA realized that they didn't have a quality softball field and a softball stadium to be able to hold the games on that aspect either. So knowing that we were on the list for the whitewater and the canoe slalom, knowing that we have the largest and best softball facility in the world, it just made sense for Oklahoma City to host these two events, be the facilities for the two events for LA28. And that's really, really what happened. Is Oklahoma City set themselves up from 1993 for MAPS, and before that, when ASA, Amateur Softball Association, moved to Oklahoma City in the 60s, to where we are now through a bond in 2017 to help the NCAA stay in Oklahoma City, to now being a part and being forever Olympic venues in Olympic City. Scott, I don't hear you anymore. I don't know if that's just me.
Oh, sorry about that.
There you go.
You already referenced this, but you said we're hosting softball, and then the other event we're hosting is canoe slalom.
Correct.
One of my, I think we talked about this earlier as it relates to things that people think are MAPS programs or projects that aren't, and one of them is Devon Park. How did we become the softball capital of the world? How did Devon Park get built? Give us a little bit of color around that.
So, ASA, Amateur Softball Association, which is USA Softball, it's the national governing body, the NGB, for softball in the United States. So every sport has an NGB associated with it. So whether that's USA Swimming, USA Track and Field, US Rowing, whatever that might be, has an NGB associated with it that is under the umbrella of the USOPC, which is the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And when ASA moved here in the 60s, they actually built and they started kind of this grassroots movement moving forward, and they had this small field and everything. And then actually through 84, we just kind of found this out in the 84 Olympics through LA had the initiative. It was the first Olympics, the first games that actually made money and had a surplus of money, and they started all these legacy programs. And one of that was actually putting money into the Oklahoma City softball field. And so ASA softball received money from the 84 games to be able to update that. And so then ASA owned that facility for many, many years. And in 1990, we actually had the first Women's College World Series that was held here. And we've had the World Series in Oklahoma City every year, with the exception of the 96 Olympics, or the 96 series, which went to Atlanta, actually just north of Atlanta, for the 96 games. And then we didn't have it in 2020 because of COVID, but we've had the games here ever since, or the series here ever since. And we have continued to invest in that facility and that property. In 2015, the World Series NCAA contract was up, and the city negotiated with the NCAA to keep the World Series in Oklahoma City for an additional 20 years. because of that, the city needed to own the property to be able to put it into the 2017 bond, and did that. And the 2017 bond had $27 million that added the upper deck that you see now, added a lot of things in what I call the guts or the basement of the facility, and some other upgrades and everything that made the facility even larger. So it went from a 5,000 permanent seat stadium to a 9,000 permanent seat stadium. And then for the game, or for the series, there's an additional approximately 4,000 seats that are constructed in the outfield. So for the series, we're just a tad less than 13,000 seats for that annual event this year. And we're the largest softball specific stadium in the world. And so it makes all the sense to play the games here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, it's an incredible investment in the city and a testament, I think, to the economic opportunity associated with
100%.
what some people would think of as like an ancillary sport or an ancillary activity. I mean, equestrian for the state fairgrounds is the exact same thing. It generates hundreds of millions of dollars a year in the local economy. And, Devon Park is another one of those ancillary venues that people may not visit on a regular basis just locally, but it brings in a lot of people to our community. So it's incredible what's happened there and how it's been invested in. On the right side of the split screen picture you guys see now is Riversport, OKC. David, tell me a little bit about that. And specifically what I want you to focus on is the maps. It was a MAPS 3 project, and was the vision of this to host Olympic events, or what was the original vision for Riversport OKC?
So this was, I believe, the first project that we completed out of MAPS 3. Just some quick stats. There's 8.5 million gallons of water in there. It's only one of 3 whitewater facilities in the United States that operates outside of an active river. So yes, Tulsa did just put in some whitewater activities there on their river, but it's dependent on the river. This one has 6 pumps that, when they're all operating at one time, they can fill an Olympic swimming pool in 87 seconds. So they move a lot of water. They can adjust the amount of flow through various ways by how many pumps are running or how many channels they have open. So it's a very versatile facility. And that being said, the reason why is there was a vision to host Olympic events. I don't think that it was the vision that it would be the Olympics. It certainly was the trials, the various sub competitions to get to the Olympics that the people have to do. That was certainly on their mind, but the actual Olympics, I don't think so. But it is a very unique facility.
How many of these facilities exist in the United States?
Well, just 3, but if you go worldwide, there's a lot in Europe and there's some in Australia, but just 3 that are outside of an active river in the United States.
I think until last year, the only other one in the United States was in Charlotte. I've actually been to that facility and seen it and toured it. But what I think might be interesting for folks that have joined us today to know is this is the closest one to Los Angeles that exists in the United States, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And that's wild to me. But I just think shows how unique a facility we have in our community, something else to really, really be proud of. Is any MAPS 4 money, David, going to prepare for the Olympics in any way, or help me understand how that works?
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to have been able to build the convention center to what we wanted, what was expected, and still have some money left over. So there was $5 million of convention center money that went unused on the convention center, and that has been allocated for various things at the Whitewater facility. And that's being administered through Public Works. That's why I don't know anything about it. These MAPS projects, once we finish them and hand them off, I'm kind of kind of finished with them. So Public Works is carrying that on.
Got it. But the maps for funding that was redirected, that was allowed simply because it was a MAPS 3 project. And so that would allow the MAPS program to pull those funds over.
I think that made it certainly more palatable, but in reality, that money could go anywhere as long as it's a capital improvement of the city. That's all that's really required of the MAPS 3 money. It said that it has to be capital improvements. We completed the project as expected, as described. So it was excess collections.
Got it. I just think it's important for people to understand the kind of the separate nature of that MAPS funding and the obligation to spend it. So I just kind of wanted you to highlight that, subtle and intricate difference of it was a capital improvement project. It was an approved project. So we had some excess funds and we applied them.
Right. And that's a good point, that all of that excess collections and the interest went to MAPS 3 projects. There was more money spent on sidewalks. There was more money spent to the river area. There was money sent to wellness centers. Each of the senior wellness centers received a lot. As your slide showed, we expanded the first wellness center immediately. So yes,
Yeah.
For the most part, all that stays within the program.
Yeah. And Sue, what will this mean for Oklahoma City in terms of like how many people are going to be here and what will it mean for local businesses? What is the expectation of the city as you and the city manager's office begin to lay out the plans for this event in 2 summers from this summer? What does that look like?
It's a lot. The planning has been ongoing for quite a while, longer than most people realize. So I was in Paris in 2024, and then the Winter Olympics in Milan actually starts in just a few weeks. I think probably the best way to kind of explain the number of people that we are kind of anticipating in Oklahoma City is there are 51 competition venues for the LA 28 games. And 2 of them are in Oklahoma City, 49 of them are in Southern California. LA is anticipating 15 million visitors for their part of the games. And if you just do simple math, that's about 294,000 people per venue. So in Oklahoma City, that would be almost 600,000 people in Oklahoma City for our 2 venues and our 2 competition sports. So if you think that the city is 720-ish thousand, 740-ish thousand people, give it an extra 600-ish thousand people that'll be in town. May not be all at one time, but I highly anticipate that there are going to be at least that many people here. I mean, that's a vast number of people that are going to be here that we will need to support. And that's through hotel rooms, through restaurants, through retail, through attractions, through other things to do, because the vast majority of people won't have an actual ticket to the competition. So what are we going to give them something to do that is Olympics related, that is our sports specifics related? So all those things we're working through to try to make sure that those visitors are taken care of while they're here.
Yeah, and I've heard you say this to a couple other folks, but again, those participating, especially EO members, if you think about if you have a business that is catering to, retail customers, I've heard you say, Sue, like restaurants need to consider altering their hours during the Olympics. If they're closed on Sundays, they should rethink that.
Yes.
They're just things they should do operationally in preparation for hosting that would allow them to capitalize on those transient dollars while they're here.
Oh, 100%. I think that, every restaurant should be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, throughout the entirety of the games. It is going to be making sure you're staffed up. It's, making sure you have enough staff that we plan on where that staff is going to park, how they're going to get in there. And then also, how are you going to get your goods, whether you're a restaurant that you're having your food deliveries or whether you're retail, making sure you have your good deliveries, making sure that you have enough to one, so you can sell, and for, just the sheer number of people that are going to be here. That's going to take logistics on our side. That's coming in regards of communication of how you're going to receive those goods in your business. So if you're a restaurant and you receive your food, orders Friday at 8 a.m., more than likely, once a week is not going to be enough. And then two, it's probably not going to be at 8 a.m. It's probably going to be at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when it's a lot quieter and you can pull that product into your venue. So those are all the things that we're thinking about as we're moving forward, just the sheer number of people. When you think about the NBA parade, there was about 500,000 people in a 3-hour period. It's not going to necessarily be like that. It's just going to feel like a significantly busier, more dense city, especially downtown, and then everywhere around it too. We're very lucky that our events don't overlap. So when we have canoe slalom first, and then we have softball second, we start every day, with the exception of one day at 9 a.m. Local time. So that's 7 a.m. In LA. So we're the very first thing on NBC for the Olympic broadcasting. So you're going to see Oklahoma City the very first thing. So all these things are really, really great. And I truly expect there's going to be a large number of people that come to Oklahoma City, because LA is going to feel like it's too far for a lot of people, too expensive and too intimidating. But Oklahoma City is not going to feel that way. When you realize that Dallas-Fort Worth is 3 hours away and there's 8 million people down there, it's going to be a big deal. We know from experience that the College World Series brings in drivable people from all over the country every year, and that don't have a problem at all driving 12 to 16 hours. That's just a good indication of the number of people that we feel will come in for the games.
Yeah, certainly exciting. Matt, how is the city council thinking about this event, and kind of what else are you all doing and helping the city do in terms of preparing to host the games, and what do you expect it will mean for residents?
Like Sue alluded to, unless you need to be downtown, don't come downtown. If you can work from home, because it's going to be 14 days of a Thunder Parade in downtown and out around the zoo. I know that Embark is working on easing in and outs with the buses and where they're going to pick up and where you can park large amounts of people and transport in on a bus. There's a lot of the GO bond we just passed is going to build some of the permanent fixtures at both of the things, nothing temporary. There's a volunteer group of dollars that are going to build the temporary things. It's lots of wheels in motion and lots of things to get done between now and 2028. I know that security is going to be a big issue. During the Thunder Parade, we had 20 separate agencies from state, federal, and county that were keeping our streets safe. And I'm sure that will be basically the same this time around too. Maybe not snipers on rooftops, but that will definitely be of concern to our police force here, is keeping everybody safe. And that everybody has a good time, that we're able to treat everybody respectfully and fairly. And so it's going to be a great event. It's going to be a huge boom to Oklahoma City.
I think maybe outside of the Thunder Parade, just because of what that meant to the community and how long we were waiting to get that or have that. And some communities will never host that. I think the Olympics is going to be the coolest thing that's happened in Oklahoma City in my lifetime, in terms of activity and what it means, and just putting us on the map and seeing all the visuals of the new arena, for example, which will be under construction when this starts, featured in our skyline every time somebody turns on their TV to watch the softball game or canoe slalom or something. So it's really exciting. Before I move on to our last question, one piece of value, Sue, I wanted to try to have you create, and it's up on the screen now, and I know this registration is already open, but quickly, how can people who are on this call go about getting Olympic tickets if they don't already know that process?
Sure. So the ticket portal the tickets are not available yet. The lottery for the tickets is available. So if you're within the city of Oklahoma City, and we've given them what zip codes they are. If you're not necessarily in Oklahoma County, if you're within that group, you can go on to la28.org and go to register for tickets. And what that does is that you register to become in the lottery for the ticket grab. So what you do is you go through and you go through the whole thing. You put in your zip code, you put in what sports that you want to be able to go to, and then you basically get into the ticket lottery. So that lottery will then come around. If you're lucky enough to be picked as a part of that, then basically you don't really get to choose your sport, your competition. For us, obviously, they'll give you, one or the other one. But if you were in LA, for example, and you said, "Oh, my favorites are swimming, gymnastics, and athletics," which is track and field, you may get handball and breakdancing and something else. But us, since we have the two, you'll probably get one or the other one. But you don't really get a choice. You'll be like, here's your date and your time that you get your tickets, and if you want to purchase them, you can. And most people end up doing that. And then the general tickets will go on sale after that. So they're giving the locals the first chance, and then other tickets will go on sale.
Gotcha. Well, I hope everybody heard that. And as she said, you can Google LA28, follow the process. I've registered for tickets. Fingers crossed that the lottery falls in my favor. But I think it'd be an amazing thing to take my girls to while it's here. It's a once in a lifetime event.
Absolutely.
Odds are even for them. So, all right. Well, let's end here to leave a few minutes for Q&A with the folks that joined us. So let's fast forward to the future and pretend that MAPS 5 was in discussion today. What would be your one project you would want considered for inclusion? And David, I'll start with you.
I was afraid you were going to do that. I don't think it's fair to ask the MAPS program manager what he thinks needs to be in the next MAPS.
You've overseen all of them, David. It is a fair question.
They all evolve, and you can see how they've differed. A couple of things come to mind is that I think that what you might see is some of the original MAPS projects needing significant renovations. They'll be 30 years old, the ballpark, the canal, the library, some of that stuff. I think that things will come to light because it is a grassroots type effort. The community brought the mental health things that are in MAPS for the community, brought a lot of the like Palomar and Diversion Hub and those kind of things. But what I hope doesn't happen is I hope that we don't lose sight on what MAPS is really for, and that it becomes just like another bond issue. MAPS is for transformational projects, not for going out and fixing the streets. Not, sidewalks has been in that, but that's a special deal because we were so far behind. I hope that it continues to be focused on transformational projects.
That's great. Sue, what project would you like to see on the MAPS 5 slate?
So I totally agree with David. I think that as we get through our original MAPS projects are, 30 years old, I think there has to be money set aside for maintenance, renovations and operations of all those things. I think that is incredibly important. But for a very specific project, I would say we have this beautiful $287 million convention center that actually is celebrating its 5-year anniversary this week, which is crazy. I would like to see an extension on that. I think we're at a point where we can use more exhibit hall space, more meeting room space, an even larger ballroom. I would love to see phase 2 of that convention center get done.
I think that's a great answer. Matt, before I go to you, I'll just tell our audience, people participating, if you have any questions, we're going to have a couple minutes. Feel free to put those in the chat on the Q&A piece, and we'll try to address a couple of those before we sign off. But in the meantime, Councilman Hinkle, what would be your MAPS 5 project of choice?
Well, I'm going to agree with David and Sue is that we need MAPS for maintenance because we've got lots of things that are getting 30 years old, but I'm going to disagree on the roads part. We just passed a geo bond for $2.7 billion. But when staff went out to all the departments and asked what they needed, it was a $9 billion ask. So 10 years from now, we're already 7 point something billion dollars short from what we should have done 10 years ago. So I would love to see a maps for streets to, I mean, it's not going to be sexy to pass, but I hear more about how horrible our streets are than I do almost about anything other than homelessness.
Yeah, you and I don't have the exact stat in front of me, but I think maybe Sue or David or Matt, one of you guys know, but I think when I was on planning commission, I learned that we have something like 620 linear miles of roads, or so, I can't remember it's like some ungodly number.
It's enough to go back and forth to LA a couple of times, I think is what the stat is. It's huge.
It's massive. I said 620. That's actually our square miles, but yeah, it's an unbelievable amount of infrastructure to try to maintain given our city's size. So it's a really hard thing to manage and stay in front of from a capital perspective. So whether it's maps for streets, whether it's expansion of the convention center or transformational projects we haven't imagined yet, I certainly will be someone that supports MAPS 5 in our efforts to keep the city moving forward. Because if you look at what we've accomplished since 1993, it's very obvious that in spite of maybe a project or two people feel differently about or don't support as much, they have been transformational and they've made our city what it is today. And I just want to say that I'm thankful to each of you for the role that you have played and continue to play in making our city a better place. David, thanks for all your work on the project. Matt, thanks for your service as a city council person. And Sue, thanks for being the person in the city manager's office who makes all these special projects and programs come to life. Oklahoma City is exceptionally well managed. And as we look across the country, I know as a resident, I am extraordinarily proud to be from here and see how effective our city government has been able to keep itself. And that's a testament to each of you and lots of leaders over the years. So with that, I thank you. And I'll say, if anybody has any questions, we'll take them now. And if not, we'll conclude. So I'll give it a minute. Danielle, Brian, any other panelists have questions? It sounds like maybe there's a problem with the Q&A section, but if someone has a question, I'll take it now, and we'll pause just a minute to see if there is one.
And if anyone on the line has a question, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you as well.
I've got a quick question. You talked about the events. I think maybe I heard, did somebody say 13 days worth of events here for the Olympics?
It's so the Olympic Games are actually 17 days. It's July 14th through the 30th. We have 16 days of events in Oklahoma City, what we call day zero, which is opening ceremonies. So we actually start with canoe slalom. That goes for 9 days. Then when that's done, we go 5 days of 3 games each for softball. And then we have 1 day where we have the bronze medal game. That's an evening game. And then the gold medal game for softball is the next day. And that is a 9 a.m. game. So that's the first thing on TV. So we actually do go 16 days. And so we have 1 kind of buffer day at the end of the games. So in case something happens with weather or anything like that, we have a buffer day.
Yeah, and I think somebody once, I heard that it'd be like hosting the Super Bowl for 16 straight days. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, so in LA, they actually equate it to hosting 3 Super Bowls a day for 17 days. For us, it's going to be like hosting, the parade every single day.
We had a question come in the chat. I'll read this for you guys and then let Matt and Sue and David, you guys, whoever wants to take it, can take it. Is there an information campaign directed to Olympic out-of-town visitors promoting services like the trolley system, other transportation issues, as well as the promotion of local businesses?
Not yet, but that is something that we are currently working on. We'll be working with Visit OKC on that. We'll be working with the City of Oklahoma City to be able to get that communication out, and with the State Tourism Department. So yes, that is on our radar. We do know that we need to do that. We are currently really focusing on the competition venues as of right now, and we're starting to get into some of these other things. Please don't worry, we will have that information out But it is not, we don't have any information to necessarily give anyone as of yet.
And Sue, as that develops, as that information becomes available, what's the best place to locate updates to that information?
That's a great question. My guess is probably going to be on the Team OKC 2028 website as that gets moving and we get more information. That is going to be really collaborative with Team OKC, with the Chamber, with Visit OKC, with the city, and then with all the entities that we can get, whether it's the Hotel Motel Association, the Restaurant Association, independent shopkeepers, the whole 9 yards that we'll try to get in and communicate with about what does it mean. So we're going to start talking with some of these groups within the next few months to get them just a little bit of information to be able to know what's going on. There's going to be other things that people will be allowed to do, other events that they can go to, whether it's at Scissortail, whether it's at the convention center. We're going to use our other venues that we currently have, such as the Bricktown ballpark we're going to use for events, the multi-purpose stadium. When that's done, we'll use that, State Fair Park, those kinds of things, or Oklahoma City Fairgrounds. We'll use all of our venues as a part of that to give people something to do. And then hopefully they get to explore, the state as well.
Got it. We had another question come in, and I'll take this one. It says, technically, Councilman Hinkle, the geese are Canadian geese. So isn't that a Department of Homeland Security problem? That's meant to be a joke. I'll say to the person who asked it, that's a multi-jurisdictional question. Matt is going to put together a committee to investigate this matter thoroughly. And I know who you are, so you'll have a seat on that committee. They're going to meet once a week for 50 weeks. We look forward to hosting you at City Hall. With that, Councilman Hinkle, Ms. Hollenbeck, Mr. Todd, thank you very much for joining us. To the EO members here, I just want to say I really appreciate it. The board came to us and said, hey, we want to know what's going on in the community. We'd love to know more about what's happening in the city of Oklahoma City. Can you put it together? And my team and I at Mercer Advisors, we don't know everything, but we know who to go to for everything. And these are the folks that we assembled to have it. So I hope you guys found it valuable, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. And I wish everybody a safe and warm Monday. Cheers, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Quack, quack.